Luke, what got you into gambling?
I think the environment initially, young man around a lot of other men that enjoyed the punt, being involved in footy clubs, and, it was just a common thing for people to just have a punt.
Yeah.
I just started doing it. I had a beard when I was 16, so it was pretty easy to get into venues and do it.
So you started going to the TAB then?
Yeah, so I was going to the TAB quite a bit, or whenever I could. I mean, I didn't have heaps of money back then.
Yeah.
I was going as much as I could, and I didn't really get into the online stuff until later.
What were you betting on?
Anything.
Yeah.
Anything. It started with go to the TAB and bet on horses. Loved the sports multis. Yeah, just loved betting on absolutely anything that was on.
And were you with your mates initially, or were you going by yourself a lot straight away?
A bit of both. I think mates initially.
You liked it a bit more than they did?
Yeah, just a little bit. So with them initially, but then once they'd had enough, I'd stick around by myself and just go in as much as I could by myself, and it was a time filler for me.
So what was the first big win for you?
First big win that I can recall was I went in Friday night, went to put on just $20 footy multi, right? And put on a few different bets, and one of them bounced back. I went to put two different things within the same game. Couldn't do that back then, but they make it happen now. So anyway, $5 came back to me, and I thought, well, I've already committed to spending this. So I just looked up top right, and I can visualize this so clearly now. A horse race about to jump in a couple of minutes in WA, and there's 20 horses running. So I just picked one of the favourites and two of the ones paying $100 or something in a trifecta, and sure enough, 1, 2, 3, bang.
Right.
So from that $5, I think I won about 4 or 5 grand.
How old were you then?
17.
Yeah. Okay, so you were a king for a day then, big time.
King for a day, and that's about as long as it lived, because I remember I didn't want to tell anyone. Like I told a couple of mates about it, but I remember hiding the tickets, so they couldn't give me all the money. They didn't have it, so I had to get it out over a couple of days. And I hid the tickets in my top drawer because I was living with Dad and my stepmom. So I hid it because I was ashamed.
Yeah. Well, and you can't let them know about that, because if you're winning money, people are going to ask questions about it straight away. And
for sure,
obviously that was probably you might not have recognised it at the time, but that was the start of developing a habit because you're hiding it.
100%.
Yeah.
Like I was so ashamed and felt so guilty about how I had won it that I couldn't share the joy and the exhilaration in actually winning it. That's how low I felt of the act.
Yeah,
and that was at that age.
But it was a high, obviously.
It was a high. I think the excitement about what I could do with the money.
What did you do with it?
Well, the only positive thing I remember doing was I always used to get my car rego for 3 months, but I remember getting 12 months rego, and I thought that was a huge achievement. I was so wrapped with that. But honestly, the rest of the money would have gone straight back into the TAB.
Yeah. And lo and behold, you weren't actually a magic punter.
No,
you just got real lucky.
I got lucky, obviously. I just picked 3 numbers. And I certainly was not a magic punter, but
that's the thing with it, isn't it? Everyone's going to get lucky once, and often it happens early on, and then you're convinced straight away, like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. It's pretty easy. Yeah, I must be good at it
for sure.
And then can take a whole lot of actually reminding yourself that you're not before you figure that out, and sometimes you never do. Were you already struggling with your mental health at that point?
Looking back now, I can recall that there were certainly experiences that I had developed patterns around, but back then I wasn't aware that I had any issues with my mental health, or that I had any barriers or blocks or anything like that. I was just completely unaware of it.
Yeah. Okay. So how did it progress from there? Because you're still at school at this point?
So I left school at the age of, I finished year 11, so I would have been, 16, 17, whatever it was. I just wanted to play AFL footy. So all my time and energy was going into training and trying to make it into the AFL. At that point, the gambling was still happening. With any money that I had, it was going to that, and pretty much any time away from training, playing with friends was spending time gambling. And I didn't really realise that was a problem until I started getting into some pretty severe debt, doing acts like, borrowing money from people and then blowing it, but thinking that I'd be able to pay them back with wins, and then having to own up. Like that stuff started to eat away at me and started to build a lot of shame and guilt.
Because that starts to change who you are as a person.
Yeah.
Or your own view of yourself as
sure.
well. Because you obviously, you're not a bad person, never were. You have your own morals. It must feel like, I'm becoming something else.
Yeah, for sure. And hated myself.
Who are you borrowing money from?
Anyone. Like, started with, people close to me. So, dad, my brother.
And what's an example?
Friends.
Like, what would you say to
them? Well, I think firstly, I did go to them and say that, I've got these debts, I have been gambling, but I didn't recognise it as the problem as to what the extent it was. But just that hadn't been paid, or pay was behind, and needed to borrow some, or lost my wallet. Just stupid.
You're like, mate, that's the fourth time this week.
Yeah, and that's why eventually you just start going to different people. Just anyone that I felt could lend me $50, $100, because that's all I felt that I needed just to get going.
Yeah.
And build it.
Yeah. And so how long did that sort of behaviour go on for?
Up and down for, like, I can say now, 10 years.
Were you working?
Yeah. So working. So after, I guess, I had believed that I couldn't make the AFL system, which was only at the age of 18, 19, then had to start thinking, well, what am I going to do for work? And got a sales job, working, earning decent money. But yeah, any time that I started gambling more, my time spent on being productive at work just completely diminished.
Yeah, and such a distraction as well.
Huge. Yeah.
So by this time you're into the phone betting.
Yeah.
Which, having a TAB in your pocket is a problem if you're into that, because it's always there and there's always something to bet on. And that's the thing about especially Australia. It's just insane how much there is to gamble on at any moment. Anything.
And it's evolved so much, and it is scary to think about how easy it is to access right now. And it evolved for me because I used to view the TAB, like I hated going to the TAB. I only went because that was the only place I could actually go.
Yeah, it's a pretty dirty sort of a place to hang out.
I would look at the older guys in the TAB making a generalisation and just think of them as so low and pathetic. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing as them. I actually despised going there. So as soon as I could get on my phone or my laptop and do it in complete privacy, I was hooked.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And so how much was it paying you back, or what happened money-wise with wins along the way?
Yeah.
Were there times you remember where, you had a big peak and you're like, all right, this is it, and then fucked it up again? Or
not really.
No.
I had systems in my head. Like I've been, like, I'm very very logical in a sense, which is crazy to think about how much logic I put into this. But I had strategies where I would start with 50 and I would bet on something that was $1.02 live that was about to finish, and I would keep rolling it and compounding it. And I had these theories that I was going to make $2 million in 100 bets or 200 bets or whatever it worked out to be. I would, fuck up after bet 3 or 4 because I would start to try and
get confidence,
accumulate it quicker.
Yeah.
And then I would just go, oh no, I got away from my strategy. I broke away from it. So I'd make excuses about why I was losing, but it's betting on things, like there's a chance you're going to lose.
A good chance, yeah.
So I just had so much belief that I could be a millionaire from this. Like, but in back to the question, in the wins, there was.
What was the reality of that though? The problem is, like, you can say, I think people who never gambled will say, like, oh, you never win, why would you do it? But while that's largely true, the fact is every gambler knows you can win, and that you're only ever one win away from it potentially being life-changing or changing your situation. If you got that thought in your head, it's very hard to get away from that. If you never won, then it would be all good because you would know that you're never going to win. But if you have some experience with that, actually it is possible, and then that can be like a little worm in your brain.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points to that, and one is, back then I thought it was about the money. I thought it was about trying to get the riches and the fancy car and the house and all of that. I thought that that's what it was about. Looking back now and understanding through the work that I've done on myself and my own journey, I understand that I wasn't betting to make money, because it doesn't matter how much I won, it would have continued. It just would have continued. The reason I was betting is because I was trying to escape reality. And it's like any addiction. We're doing it because we're escaping reality. It started, as we said, with the environment that I was in, and I was betting because other people around me were betting, but I'm still using that as an excuse. I then dove into it because I wanted to get myself out of a stressful environment that I may have been in that day, and that was my way to escape reality.
How did you justify it to yourself in your head through those years? Or what would that voice in your head say?
Oh man, so many things. And like, it was a constant cycle. It was a cycle between hating myself for letting people down around me, for letting myself down, but then to escape that pain, to escape that reality, and to escape that hurt and guilt that I had.
And to maybe instantly fix it.
And to instantly try to fix that, it was, let's go and gamble again. Let's put in that other $50. So it was only the points where I didn't have access to anything that it actually came to me that, I can't continue to do this. I need to go talk to someone and get some help.
But you're a smart guy, and I think that's another thing that's hard for people to understand if they've never had any experience with it, which is, why would smart people get into this when they know the odds and that in the end you're going to lose? Why would you continue to do it? How do you answer that?
I think that comes back to, what are you escaping? Like, it doesn't matter whether it's gambling, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's scrolling through social media. We're doing that to escape reality. It's just that we've attached to that particular behavior as a way to numb our pain.
It's all the same part of the brain. You can maybe prioritize or have a taste for one or two of those vices, and then that might change. You might stop with one, pick up another one instead, because once you've sort of woken that up, whether you're totally conscious of it or not, there's something inside you that demon wants to be fed somehow. It's the same beast wearing different clothes.
100%. And you don't realize that in the moment. And that's why it can be hard for people to understand gambling, but I can always almost
relate it to another vice.
Relate it to something else that they're doing too much of that's affecting their life. So it can be difficult to justify or to allow people to understand why in particular you would go to gambling when the odds aren't in your favor. But
it's like answering those other questions, like, why would you do drugs when it's potentially dangerous? It's like, well, because I got high off it, I can have it instantly, gives me a rush and leaves me feeling empty afterwards. And you go through all of those, they all have that same thing, but there's something innately human in us that looks for that adrenaline. And I don't think anyone sets out trying to be addicted to anything. It just, they will get their hooks into you.
For sure.
Yeah. But especially gambling. And I guess alcohol is another good example, because it's acceptable to a degree.
It's everywhere.
Like the advertising is insane on TV, and you just can't go anywhere without seeing it. You can't watch any sport game without it being on the court or on the field or having halftime, which reinforces to people this is what you should be doing, or it's all right, or it's not an issue. And we're not saying that everyone who has a punt has an issue, because that's not the case either. But we're not saying everyone who has a drink has an issue either. But these things are in our culture, in our face, and saying like, this is an Aussie thing to do, it's all good. And some of the other ones, at least they're a lot more frowned upon. So perhaps people aren't feeling like, especially young people, seeing dad have a punt, your brother has a punt, every time you're watching the game, you're talking about the multi you've got, and you're like 15, 16, you'll be doing it too.
Yeah, for sure. And that brings me to, I guess, a moment where I shared with my brother and my dad when they couldn't understand it. My dad and my brother have a punt, and as far as I know, completely no problem there. But we had a discussion one day where it was brought up to me, like I was getting triggered at the time whenever it was getting told. So I shared with them, to support me, it'd be great if you didn't talk about gambling or what you're betting on in front of me. And not long after, Dad did just, wasn't aware of it, but did it. And I brought that up to my brother when I was having a coffee with him, and his reaction to me at that point was, well, you've got to get used to it because it is everywhere. And I'm completely understanding and aware of that. But my response was, well, let's consider I was addicted to heroin. Would you talk about heroin and heroin use in front of me? And his response is, well, it's completely different. And that's where, for me, there's a lot of, and this is like my brother and my dad, they only know what they know. So, the tools that they've got are the tools that they've got. But this is where it comes back to education in society around, if that's someone's way of support by not talking about it, understand that. But also we've got to understand how big of a problem, as you mentioned, like gambling advertising is everywhere. You can't watch sport without seeing odds or without a celebrity giving you advice essentially on what you should bet on. So it's extremely difficult for people to break away from that.
One of the
habit.
bookies is the official partner of the AFL.
Yeah.
Like, which is, these are organisations that young men in particular look to for guidance and leadership. And those organisations are saying, we not only think this is all right, we fully endorse it.
We raised the question, why is there so much, why are you still continuing with that relationship, with that agency? And the response was, well, there's so much money until there's a major problem. Why would we cut them? So it's the hard thing is to determine how much of a problem gambling is.
And then, it's a hard argument to make to say that it should be stopped as well, because, again, you can go to alcohol and say, well, alcohol does a lot of damage, also brings in a lot of money. Are we going to stop doing that? And does someone who has a problem with gambling have the same problem with alcohol? And how do you argue one's worse than the other? It's a tough one. We can have our own opinion, but also see that it's a lot more complicated than that as well. Yeah,
definitely.
So what was the thought, what was the catch that sort of you keep coming back to, when you felt really bad or you just lost a lot of money again and you're feeling at your worst, what was it that would get you back into it?
Just the thought of being able to be free. Like I genuinely thought that by winning it would escape my problems, and my problems was debt. My problems were poor relationships. I thought that by winning I'd be able to pay off the debt. I'd be able to repay the people that had lent me money and escape that guilt.
And you thought that for 10 years?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So how far down did that lead you?
Deep. Like I maxed out, and we can talk financially, and, when I've spoken to other problem gamblers, it's, generally it's the first thing is financial, but man, I realize now, like I was maybe 60, 70 grand in debt, but money comes and goes. Money's an energy. Like for me, I was at the point where I wanted to take my own life because I hated myself. Yeah. Like that's... That was multiple times. I hated myself because I just kept fucking up, and I couldn't be the person I wanted to be. It was just, it's like it seems so hard to really feel like that now because of the work that I've done to repair and remove the negative emotions attached to how I felt. But yeah, multiple times of just, well, not multiple times, like the thoughts were there every day about like, the fuck am I doing? Like, who am I? Like, I hate myself.
But you felt powerless to pull away from it. Yeah. How do you describe like the addiction? Did you see it as a monster or something that was following you, or, you know, did you think of it in that way?
Yeah, I felt controlled. Like I felt that I had zero control I just felt powerless and out of control. And anytime I would, you know, I could sit there and say, not going to gamble today. Like I'm focusing on what I'm going to do. There was so much focus on stopping instead of focusing on what I could control, you know. So there was just so much energy put into stopping gambling that the gambling would just end up coming back.
Yeah, which again is the same for so many addictions, where it becomes just so hard not to do it. Maybe not that you certainly don't want to do it past a certain point, but the reality of stopping it is so hard that, it sounds like you're saying it was just, of course it was just easier. Yeah. But then that brings with it a sense of giving up and hopelessness and like, I'm not strong enough to beat this.
Yeah.
So did you feel like you had given in at certain stages?
Definitely, because I felt that I had tried everything. I didn't have the tools at the time, but I felt that I had tried everything. I'd opened up. Everyone says, you know, when you're struggling, open up to the people around you. So when I did that, went back to gambling. I then went to counselling, tried that, stopped for a bit, went back to gambling. I then went to a psychologist, did that, went back to gambling, went to group therapy, Gamblers Anonymous. Help for bits, went back to gambling. So by that point, I'm just thinking, well, I've tried everything. I can't stop.
Yeah, like this must be who I am now.
It became my identity, 100%. 100%.
Did you have intimate relationships during that time?
Very little. And when they were, it was so intense that it was just destined to fail.
Right.
Like short-lived. High intensity, just destined to fail because it was just not coming from a healthy place. I got into intimate relationships where I was desperate for support, desperate for financial support, desperate for a house to stay in, you know. So I was going into them completely unhealed, so unhealthy that when they didn't work out, it hurt, but looking now,
it was always going to happen.
It was always going to happen.
And it probably just reinforced that self-loathing that you knew to be true, sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy sort of a deal.
Definitely.
Did it mess with your sex drive?
Yeah, it did, definitely. Because like I was super sad a lot of the time now. Like I was miserable a lot. And that's where, like, for a little bit of this spiral, that's when, you know, the anxiety started to come in around sexual performance. It would come in around, you know, the phone would ring and I would think it was someone chasing me for money, so I just couldn't even pick up the phone. But like I got super depressed, and I was at a point where the sadness was there constantly. Unless I was with someone, I could put on a smile. But when I was by myself, I was just miserable. Miserable, yeah.
And did you have any other healthy elements to your life at the time? Like, were you working out? Were you taking care of yourself whatsoever? Or did it get to, you know, things were falling down so badly in one department that you were like, whatever, and you just sort of let it all slide because you were depressed?
I feel I've always had a pretty resilient side to me. So, you know, after self-loathing for a bit, I would bounce back. I'd get back into the gym. I'd keep exercise up. Like I was still playing footy a lot throughout this period.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd still be focusing on that. I still had friendships. Like I've always had a lot of friends, but there was just no depth to a lot of them because I couldn't allow myself to do it because deep down I just hated myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and you didn't want to admit to that because you were sort of afraid of what would happen, or maybe afraid of who you truly had become and wanting to lie to yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. How easy was it for you to hide?
I'd say pretty easy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how. Well, part one, I don't know how people didn't realise, but surely they did. Is part two, because, you know, I've known people struggling with certain problems over the years and haven't known what to say. So I'm sure there's been people that have noticed my behaviours and haven't known how to approach, how to support, how to help. So I feel it was pretty easy to hide because it can be pretty easy to just put on a smile and deal with someone for a few minutes and take off. Like most of my jobs that I've ever been in, I've never been in like an office environment, so I've been pretty autonomous, been able to work from home. Very easy to hide when you're doing it like
it's
that.
Not like a substance where people can see it in your behaviour and on your face that you're on something, or you know, I think that's probably the most insidious thing about it, is that it is so easy to hide from people.
With the friendships as well, because I wasn't seeing them regularly, they couldn't notice either and be able to, you know, pick it up or pull me up on it either.
When you reflect, how long did it own you for before you accepted that it did?
Like I recognised the problem at the age of 17. I admitted to the problem not long after. I would say it owned me from that point through to the point where I started being able to actually have the tools to move on from it.
How did you come to be diagnosed with BPD?
I would say through my own desire to get a diagnosis. So I was desperate, because at this point I'd been sharing my story of struggle with people all around the country. Like I'd spoken in big businesses around my struggle in the hope to inspire others. When I started to
Were you still gambling then?
Still gambling, yeah, still gambling. So I was still gambling. I was still feeling shit. Like I was still at a real low point. I'd have higher points, but when I started to feel better, and when I would have a speaking gig, I couldn't connect. I couldn't relate back to my struggle. So it's almost like that identity, that was my identity now. So I needed to struggle. I needed to have some disorder in order to make my story credible.
Right, because otherwise you felt like you would have imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
But obviously not true, because once you've had it, or once you've had an experience, doesn't mean you need to continue for what you have to say to be worth something.
That's it. Like I was looking at other advocates and being inspired by them in the mental health field, but they were still living the struggle. So that's what I thought I needed to do. I thought that I needed to still have suicidal thoughts in order to be real. You know, I needed to have something. So I went through, it was probably an 18-month process of first, you know, I'd been to the GP a long time before this, but from the process where I was really looking for a disorder, I was looking for a diagnosis, and it was thrown around that it could be bipolar, it could be borderline, it could be this, could be that. I looked up online and looked at the list of symptoms, and I was like, that's me. I could attach myself to anything that I wanted to believe that I had. So to the point where I got a diagnosis, I was like, yep, sweet. Now I've got this. Now I can manage this disorder. Yeah.
Okay. But that one, it is actually legitimate that you do have that, or?
I don't believe now, no. I believe that I was showing symptoms, but everything's a choice.
Yeah.
And this is where throughout my journey, it's hard, because to try and tell my older self that I'm choosing the way that I act in every single choice and it's coming from a belief system, that would have triggered the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And it would have told myself now to fuck off.
Yeah. So in order to cope, you needed to think about it in a certain way.
Yeah. So the reason I believed I had borderline is because I was like anger was one, rage was one. So whenever I was triggered, I was acting out of anger and rage, and it was my way to be able to emotionally isolate. So with my partner, for example, if she said anything that triggered me, I would just vent and like fucking get angry and yell to the point where it would allow me to escape, because she just wouldn't want to be around me. Yeah. So it allowed me to isolate. So that was one of the main reasons that I thought that I had that. But I don't do that now, because I've done the work to go back and release anger so that I don't act out of that way.
Because that comes from a place of that self-loathing and that pain. And if you're able to let that go, then you're just not going to have the motivation to be angry, or that's not how you're going to conduct yourself.
It was a big... I felt very inadequate. So whenever I was challenged, I would feel that inadequacy, and my way to protect that is to just do whatever I could to get that person off my back.
Yeah, and make the other person the problem.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to face yourself.
Yeah.
Did you ever hurt anyone when you were going through that?
Yeah. Like, I mean, emotionally, I wouldn't know how many people I've hurt. And, you know, that's part of one of the reasons it's so hard to be able to heal yourself, because you do get a lot of guilt about the people that you have hurt. And there'd be heaps. There would be so many people that I've emotionally hurt. But like my partner now is like the strength that she's got to be able to continue to support me, because we haven't been all rosy. Like we haven't been strong, and I haven't been well our entire relationship, but I've been able to get well because I've got the love from her. But yeah, like early on, like I was really hurting her, like huge, and that would make me feel so shit by how I was acting and what I was doing. Yeah.
And so what about earning trust back?
It's hard. It is hard. Because, I mean, whatever relationship it is, whether it's intimate or friendships or family, whatever it is, there's three parts to it for me. It's you, them, and the middle ground, which is the relationship. So, you know, it can be hard, or it can be easy to let go, or to try to move on from what you've done and apologize and accept that it's happened and move on. But if that other person isn't ready to do that, then it's hard.
Yeah. Do you lose some relationships over this?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And, you know, I look back at my family, and I look back at, you know, friends that I had years and years ago. Like, I'm a completely different person now. I've grown and healed so much that they wouldn't see me the same. So it's even in those relationships, they would still question, well, is this the real Luke? Is this the real him? Because that's not what I'm used to. So yeah, there's been relationships that I truly cherish that aren't really existent anymore because of what I've done. But I'm at peace with what I have done, even though I've done a lot of shit that's hurt people. But in order to do that, I need to focus on what I can control and create those new change and beliefs.
You've had to accept it.
Yeah.
And no matter how bad it was. Have you been able to heal some of those relationships and get them back?
I have. There's still more that I would like to. It does take a lot of work, obviously, to do that. But yeah, I have. And that comes from being able to be, I guess, genuine now. Whereas when I was fucked up, like it was hard to be genuine, because I didn't even believe myself. I didn't believe the words I was saying, you know? So yeah.
So how the hell did you actually pull yourself out of this when nothing worked for so long?
For me, well, there's been a couple of things. I mean, having the love and support of my partner has been huge. Without it, it probably wouldn't have, first of all, given me the belief that someone can love me whole. You know, it's easier to love the me that's, you know, inspiring and passionate and motivated. Yeah. But it can be really difficult to love the other side. So seeing that was probably a really good step in the right direction for me to be able to feel love. And it also brought up for me that I struggled with intimacy, that I struggled to truly connect, and I had barriers there. So for me, the big change is, and the reason I got into what I do is because I saw the transformation within myself. So Neurotransformation Therapy for me is by far the biggest healer of anything that you can possibly do. So for me, it was able to identify significant events in my life, which I'm not consciously going to be able to remember this, but subconsciously, while I was in the womb, my mother and father were angry, like fighting with each other nonstop, and they got a divorce when I was only a newborn. So for me, I had fear attached, but I'm not consciously going to be able to remember that. But doing neurotransformation therapy allowed me to release that fear. It allowed me to release any sadness and anger from all of the events, all the way. It can come from past generations. But for me, it was able to, those significant events, release those negative emotions, release any negative beliefs or limiting beliefs that I had, like I can't be intimate. As soon as that's released from a subconscious level, because it's consciously, I can go, oh yeah, I can be intimate, and I can look at myself in the mirror and do positive affirmations. But if that doesn't get through to my subconscious, I'm still going to believe that I can't be intimate. So that's the work that's required. The second part is actually just taking the action, and then the third part for me was being able to retrain that subconscious mind in the beliefs that I really want to believe in.
So did someone do this with you?
Yeah. So I had a coach that did this. Like, I went on a journey for ages. I was, into meditation, mindfulness. I've done breathwork courses, and a lot of different things helped heal certain parts. But that was by far the biggest transformation.
Yep, and you tried everything to that point as well.
I felt that I had, yeah. Whether it was just I wasn't ready to change properly, whether I was committed to the change. Everything's timing as well.
And different things work for different people too.
Correct.
What happened to the actual compulsion? Because when it gets as far along as it was, like you said, feeling powerless and out of control, it's just happening. As you were making these other changes and doing this therapy, what happened to the actual compulsive aspect of the gambling? Did that fall away suddenly or gradually, or how did that work?
The gambling, I'd say it kind of started to dissolve before. So as I said, I'd been to group therapy, which at that time served me in the point where I was able to reflect on it. So I was able to bring up past memories, and at that point it was serving. It was also helpful to be around people that were relatable and not judging. So for me, that helped. I had large periods of time off of gambling, but I would end up having lapses where, for a few days I'd have a binge. And this was happening. I might have a year off, and then it would happen. And
was that still a problem then? Mentally, was it a problem? Mentally,
it was a problem in the sense that I just still felt that I didn't have the full control.
Yeah, so you felt like massive guilt from it.
Yeah. And I just still felt a bit helpless from it. But like now I just don't have the anger towards the actions. I don't have the guilt towards the actions. And for me, like I can say, like, I don't want to gamble. Like, I may if I get triggered and I'm in a bad place again, but I don't have the same feeling and thoughts, and I don't care for it. Like, I feel I have control now.
So all those burners of those negative energies that were feeding into that behavior have been switched off, and then it's extinguished the drive to do it.
Yeah.
So how long did that take overall, do you reckon?
Oh,
'cause it sounds like you had a lot to work through.
There's a fair bit, and it's forever. Like, I'm not a
no one's exactly. No one's ever healed or cured from this stuff. And that's not to say that it's hopeless and you'll never be fully all right or able to live a completely fulfilled and rich life, which sounds like you're living now.
We've got almost a 5-month-old daughter. Me and my partner are healthy. We have conflict, but we resolve it better now.
Yeah, because you're not an asshole.
Exactly. Oh man, so like, it's so different. Like, she'll still get pissed off with me because I'm fucking lazy around the house. But that's a limiting belief, you know. It's just stuff like that. But I won't get triggered where I unload all my shit onto her now.
So you don't hate yourself anymore.
That's healthy. I've got meaningful relationships all around me. So there's certainly hope for people that feel that they're at the absolute bottom. There's 100% hope. For me, it is just a constant journey of being able to grow and evolve, and that comes from being able to live a bit more consciously. I mean, I was living from when I was born through to a couple of years ago. I was living completely unconscious and on complete autopilot to my behaviors that were ingrained from certain beliefs and events and emotions. So to be able to just become more conscious of what you're doing, why you're doing it, that's when you can start to really change behaviors.
Yeah, and what that's causing. So you're just talking about self-awareness and having to take a really good look at yourself and try to understand yourself on a deeper level, because it was a matter of life and death. And I guess after that sort of an experience, it feels like you're living in a different world, or you can't see things like you used to before because your eyes are open.
Yeah, 100%. It's the perception, and that's all it is. And we just project what's inside of us. And one of the things I learnt while I was being coached, and I try to pass on as much as possible, is it's a choice out of love or fear. And we pick up fear throughout our life. We get conditioned from the age of, well, as soon as we're born, we get conditioned. And a lot of what we project is our own fear, whether it's fear of what other people think, whether it's fear of rejection, whether it's a bunch of fears. We're acting out of that. So whenever I catch myself doing something that I think, I shouldn't have done that, I just ask myself, am I acting out of fear or am I acting out of love? Yeah. And I just consciously try to choose love as much as I can. Yeah. Try to choose kindness as much as I can. Try to choose gratitude as much as I can.
Yeah, there's something else to add to that I heard recently, which is similar, but asking yourself if you're acting out of gap or gain. So are you acting because you feel like you're missing something in your life and you're trying to get something you don't have? Or are you acting because you already have it and you're appreciating what you do have? And which way are you living? You're spending most of your time chasing stuff, or most of your time feeling grateful for what you've got? Yeah. And it's sometimes hard to be honest with yourself. You've got negative behaviors that are leading to negative actions and making you feel bad. Often you can trace it back and say, well, I've been trying to get something I don't have, rather than just chilling out and appreciating what I do have, what I can control.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I think we're just wired, especially in our world, when it comes to material things or just anything that would make our life seemingly easier or be a rush. And our little monkey brains, they want to go towards it, and it's it can be hard to recondition your entire brain to think differently. And even then, as evolved as you are now, you also know that it's still there, and that when things happen in your life, and they will, because it happens to all of us, and you find yourself feeling angry or having a whole lot of things going wrong, you're going to still have to watch yourself and not go back to that, because you're never fully free of it. You might be fully living your life and maybe live to the rest of your life and it's all sweet, but still it's always going to be there.
Yeah, that's constant check-ins, I think, as well, and understanding that different events will come up that do create that anger, sadness, fear, hurt, or guilt. That and there's justifiable anger. Like, if someone went and abducted my baby, I'm going to be pretty angry. It's not to say that I'm never going to feel it ever again, but
it's being conscious of how you're feeling and why.
And recognizing when it's unjustifiable. So when you're acting out of anger, or when you're really sad about something that not necessarily you shouldn't, but it's understanding what the behavioral patterns are that are making you feel like that. So it's the whole cause and effect, and it's being at cause and being responsible for every one of your actions, instead of
gives you the
others.
Control back. Yeah, which is what you never had before, where you do feel powerless, or like you don't know what's going to happen next, or that you're just reacting all the time. It's because you're not conscious and breaking it down and thinking about why these patterns keep repeating. Yeah. So how do you describe the man you are now in this rendition of Luke McLean?
Yeah, it's like, I love it. Like, I can actually say I love myself, and man, like it was so hard to think about that previous, but I just love the version that I am. Like, I see myself as a great role model and a great leader, and that goes through to my stepson and my daughter, right through my friendship circles, and through the the people that I help with my coaching. It's being a good role model and a leader, and that's what drives me, because I know a lot of people are in pain, and the world lives in fear. You have to look at the past 18 months to see how much fear there is in the world, and once we can change that fear to lead with love, and that's where I see myself. Like I had a conversation with a guy the other day, and he's in a similar field, and he felt bad about saying that he was a light worker, and I do feel like that now. I feel that I've been able to access these tools that can create massive transformation, and I love it. And I love that I can just chill and be zen at times, and then I love that I can flick into just almost beast mode and be super passionate about creating change. And I never had that balance before, but I just love being able to have that balance between chill out, family time, and then fuck it, let's go change the world.
Yeah, that's cool. Why are you thankful that everything unfolded the way it has?
It's just taught me all the lessons. Like it's easy to, in the moment of pain, to attach yourself to so many negatives. It's so easy to do that, but looking back, it's been able to allow me to take the positive learnings, and if you look at every event that's happened, no matter how traumatic it is, if you take the positive learnings from it, that's what's going to help you grow. And for me, that's like, I'm thankful I've been through it, because without it, I just live a life of nothing. Like there's no meaning if there's no pain. So you've almost got to experience that pain in order to be able to appreciate the other side of it. So, and
what have you been able to do for some other people's lives?
Oh, huge. Like I've had people that, sort of come to me, and might be an issue with drinking, for example. And they've gone away thinking that they'll just stop drinking, but then they've attached themselves to weed, or they've attached themselves to coke, or whatever it is.
Same thing
as earlier. And to be able to just make them feel free. So many men in particular just feel lost. They haven't really scratched the surface of, like, gone past surface level as to why they're feeling the way that they feel. So in order to get real deep to the root cause of those negative emotions, for most men is that's life-changing in itself. But then to remove those and just allow them to feel completely free, it gives me the best feeling. It's so gratifying to be able to help men feel that. It's just, it's crazy.
And how does that feel a space that clinical expertise doesn't?
Well, I think the neurotransformation therapy is something that will become more of the norm, I believe, because psychology, for example, is very much focusing on conscious thought. So neuro's focusing very much on subconscious. So, and as we said before, something will, everything work, not everything, but some things will work differently for others, and you benefit from different things. But a lot of guys I've worked with have done a lot of psychology, and they understand the trigger, they understand the behaviors that they're doing, but they can't change it. And it needs to come from a place, and PTSD is one of the biggest examples, is probably the best example to explain this. So you've got a hugely traumatic experience that you've then got a lot of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, or hurt towards. Your mind is going to protect you from feeling that again. So it will do whatever it can to deflect you from feeling that intense emotion. So when you try to get someone with PTSD to, I want to say get someone with PTSD, but when you try to get them to go back to the event, it's too traumatic. They're not going to get anywhere near it. So that event might happen when you're 3, but they might get to an event that they fear one of those emotions or all of those emotions when they're 20. They're not going to go back any deeper because it gets too painful. So using timeline therapy and accessing the subconscious, you can go back to that event, feel no emotion from it, you learn the positive learnings from it, and then you apply that subconsciously. It's such a quick process. It goes through all of those events in your life, and you just come out of it thinking, I have no anger, I have no sadness, I have no, and you can remove that, so that people are just feeling completely free. So it's a completely different form of therapy than standard talk therapy with psychology or counseling. Very, very different, but very rewarding once you can access it.
And what would you say to people who hear your addiction story and are going hard especially with gambling, but if it's anything, and hearing it and thinking that voice in their head saying, yeah, but that won't be me.
Everyone's journey is different, and for some people they can stop, super quick. Some people it takes a long time. It's just keep the hope. As long as there's hope, there's a way, and keep trying things. Like, Neurotransformation Therapy will work for people. Psychology will work for people. Just keep trying and keep the hope, because, it's really thinking about, if your life doesn't change in 10 years' time, what's the negative consequences of that? And for a gambler, there's fucking plenty. But what's the positive consequences of trying to change? Because if you're committed to change and you've got a strong desire to change, it will change eventually. It might happen soon, it might happen in a long time, but if you're committed, as long as you're committed and you've got that hope, you will change.
Yeah, and I think you really embody that so beautifully, because you've obviously been right down to the bottom of the barrel and gotten to points multiple times where you wouldn't have even entertained that you could stay alive much longer, let alone become someone who helps other people change their lives. It's crazy, and it's really happened in a matter of a few years. Which is just incredible for you to think back, and no wonder you see yourself as two different people, and other people do as well. But the thing is, it's all real, it's all legit. This is actually who you have become now, and it is possible, and you demonstrate that, and it sort of emanates out of you in a chilled yet wise, compassionate sort of a vibe that I'm very glad we've got here. And it's so important that people, men like you especially, are able to show men that example first of all, and then help them to follow their own journeys, man. So amazing story. Thanks for
appreciate
sharing
that, brother.
it.
Thanks.
That's it for this episode. If you're getting some value out of the show, please help us out with a quick rate and review on Apple Podcasts. All our podcasts are recorded in video, so follow Youngblood Men's Health Matters on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Youngblood Media, to get the full picture. And please leave us a comment if anything resonates. We love hearing from you. You're more than welcome to join our inner circle by signing up for our e-news through our website, youngbloodmedia.com.au. And most importantly, please share this podcast with anyone in your life who might need it. We're all about reaching as many people as we can. A special thank you to our sponsors and our local business supporters who back the work we're doing. We're all in this together, and we need all the help we can get. Until next time, this is Youngblood. Thanks for being part of the mission.